Thank you for joining us down the road. We're going to get a chance to visit with Bill Werner today. Bill is with the Minnesota News Network. There was another high-profile shooting in downtown Minneapolis. And, of course, everybody's pointing to it and saying, what will this do nationwide again, quite frankly, not just in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So we'll get a chance to visit with Bill Werner about that. Obviously, Rick Becker joined in the race for the United States Senate. He's going to challenge the United States Senator John Hoeven. We'll give you some thoughts on that. And Representative Becker, state representative, is going to join us tomorrow as we go down the road. But we'll set things up a little bit today. Obviously, somebody who has been out there covering in the media, we've had him on before, speaking to Rick Becker's expertise as a doctor, as a physician, has been Jim Shaw, award-winning journalist out of the Fargo area. Jim is good enough to join us right now. Let's visit with him. Jim, good to have you back down the road.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always glad to be here.
Well, let's talk about it. Were you shocked that Rick Becker decided to run against John Hoeven?
Yes. I'm not surprised that he's running for office again. I didn't believe for a second when Becker said he wasn't running for re-election to the state house that he was done with politics. But I thought Becker was gearing up for a run for governor in 2 years, presumably with Doug Burgum not running for a third term, but even if Burgum did run for a third term. But I never saw this coming. This is out of nowhere.
I'm going to throw out there for a lot of Beck fans that I was in this position before. In 2004, I ran for re-election to the North Dakota Senate and won. And then in 2005, my employer now, KFGO, approached me to take over Ed Schultz's show. And it was something I was interested in doing. We negotiated, and in the end, I signed a contract to do that in the middle of the legislative session. But I was never a candidate as a member of the media.
Right.
Rick Becker, because of this network, Beck News, is a candidate. Now, you managed, KVRR.
Correct.
You had to deal with FCC rules.
Right.
As I see FCC rules, whatever time this network gives Rick Becker, they have to make available then to John Hoeven. Is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate. You can go back to Ronald Reagan when he ran for president, and all of the networks had to drop all of his movies, not just his political statements or his political commentary, but all of his movies, or else that would have been considered situations where his opponents would be entitled to equal time. So for every minute that Rick Becker is on Beck, John Hoeven can say, I want that minute to present my case.
Well, and because of that, I never ran for election again. When my term was up after 2008, I was out of politics per se as an elected official. So what happens if John Hoeven, leading up to the primary, which is where we'll get to that in a second, where Rick Becker is going to take this race. What happens if John Hoeven refuses the equal time? Can Becker then stay? Because there's no ban of being on the media.
That is correct. That is correct. Beck has to offer Hoeven equal time. If Hoeven chooses not to take it, that's his business. But Becker can stay on the air. Most companies, like KFGO with you, would say, sorry, you got to make a decision because we are not really interested in giving free equal time to your opponent. But in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if Rick Becker stays on the air and John Hoeven takes little to none of that free time he's entitled to.
Well, Rick Becker and his show is one of the most popular ones on this network. He's got the kind of personality that throws a lot of bombs out there. He and I have disagreed on a number of issues. We haven't always done the kumbaya. I'll be honest about that. But, the ball's going to be in John Hoeven's court on this.
Correct. If I was Hoeven, I'd take it up because that show, that's Becker's base. So try to cut into Becker's base and present another point of view. You're entitled. How often does a candidate get entitled to free time? Never. So I would jump at it if I was John Hoeven.
What's going to be interesting is whether or not, to fit that criteria, John Hoeven has to be on the show, or if he could be producing a show, or if he could be,
He could tape something.
yeah,
Doesn't have to be live.
you know, a two minute clip every day and say he's the host, and you
Right.
know, use a co-host like Becker does to kind of fill those gaps, that type of thing. You know, you were saying that you thought he might run for governor.
Right.
Let's talk about going directly to the primary. You know, Rick Becker going directly to the primary, people are saying, well, doesn't he have the courage to look for that Republican endorsement? My answer on the radio was, why would he? You know,
Right.
the model that Kevin Kramer and Doug Burgum set up, they're not looking to go anywhere other than the primary.
I agree with you. There is no need or reason for him to go to the convention. That's just a stamp of approval, but it's not binding. The primary is where it counts. And like you said, we've seen the model, and we have seen the Republican establishment candidates be defeated by the upstart Republicans in North Dakota primaries. Kevin Kramer defeated Brian Kalk for PSC after Brian Kalk got the endorsement. Doug Burgum defeated Wayne Stenjum after Wayne Stenjum got the endorsement. Hoeven is clearly the mainstream candidate here. This is a good strategy. Put all your eggs in the basket that matters.
Well, in Rick Becker's, you know, in his case, he believes that John Hoeven hasn't been a true conservative. I want to get your take on that. Has John Hoeven been a conservative?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, if you just look at all of the votes, he does. They're conservative. He is with the Republican base all the time. You know, I mean, look, unfortunately, that has meant voting against voting rights. That has meant voting against or being opposed to the Build Back Better plan. It's being opposed to basically any progressive legislation. I mean, we're outside of, and this could be an issue, outside of Hoeven voting for the infrastructure plan. I don't know where there's a vote where you could say Hoeven crossed the line. And it's crazy to make infrastructure a partisan issue, but you know that's going to happen.
So, you know, in terms of North Dakota politics, you know, John Hoeven has always been, you know, the term was with Ronald Reagan that he was Teflon, you know, that this
Right.
might happen, that might happen, that nothing seems to stick to him. I think that Donald Trump, in many cases, has been the most Teflon politician I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you've got a man who with extramarital affairs, that a man that was with a porn star. That, yeah, I mean, if that was the case with any Democrat, they'd have been run out of office.
Exactly.
A number of bankruptcies where he didn't pay his bills. You know, with John Hoeven.
How about the tape where he talked about grabbing women in a private area?
Yeah, right. I mean, all of these things would have been, many people that are on this network would have been calling for the resignation that are hosts on this network of, you know, any Democratic president. If Barack Obama had done that, they would have kicked him out of office. You know, and so
Right.
they were always mad that the Democrats were going after Donald Trump. That being said, John Hoeven has been Teflon. You know, he never says what his position is. And I want to give candidate Becker credit here. You know, he gives you his position.
He does. He does. And Rick Becker, who is out there, but he's articulate and he's going to be aggressive, and he's going to have to force John Hoeven to explain exactly who he is. I think what you will likely see, though, is John Hoeven going big-time negative against Rick Becker, because there's a lot to go after Rick Becker on.
Well, let's talk about that after the break. But in John Hoeven's case, when you think about John Hoeven, you know, and you think about, okay, there's something there. What do you think of?
Go along to get along, on cruise control, don't bump the boat. You know, I mean, just steady as she goes, but you don't see him out there kind of leading the way on an important issue. I see him very loyal to his party. He is about the most dependable vote that Mitch McConnell can count on. but he doesn't make waves, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. When I think of John Hoeven, I worked with him as his time in governor. He hauled me into the office one time, and I'll never forget this, Jim. That there was enough votes between us conservatives in the Democratic Party and the part of the Republican Party that was ticked off about how Bob Stengen was treating them. Okay, so you had Dave Neffing and Leighton Freeberg and that faction of the Republican Party, and you had myself and Aaron Crowder and some on the Democratic side, and we rolled them. We rolled the Republican Party that day on the floor, and he called my leader, Dave O'Connell, and he said, "I want to see you in my office right away." And instead of Dave O'Connell saying, "I've got an office, walk on down," which is what I would have done, Dave came to me and he said, "All right, you started all this," which I did. Yeah. We're going to go down to the governor's office and we're going to sit there and you need to hear. He's ticked off. He's the governor of the state. So I did what my leader said. I walked and
sure.
That was the only time I ever saw emotion out of John Hope.
Really?
He raised his voice. He looked at me and he said, "You well fixed this. Don't you realize what you just did?" And I remember looking at him for the longest time, being quiet. And then when he was done talking, I said, "Are you done?" And he goes, "Yes, I'm done. What are you going to do about this?" I said, "I'm getting up and leaving." And I got up and I left. And I remember that like it was yesterday because he didn't scare me.
Right.
He doesn't scare Rick Becker.
No, obviously he doesn't. But Rick Becker, don't discount this guy. He has appeal. And this is going to be a closer race than people think.
You think so?
I do. I absolutely do.
Welcome back to Down the Road with me, Joel Heitkamp. We still got Jim Shaw here. He's good enough to give us more of his time, and we're talking about the Becker-Hoeven race, which was the big announcement over the weekend. Jim, you said you think this race is going to be close, way closer than what people say. Why?
Well, remember, this is a Republican primary. It's not a general election. In a general election, Hoeven wins. Now, primary could go either way. This state, as you know, is very Trumpy. They love Donald Trump. And the people who love Donald Trump, I would think, are more likely to vote for Rick Becker than John Hoeven. You asked Mr. Becker, Dr. Becker, on your radio show about, is he going to go after Donald Trump's endorsement? If I was Rick Becker, I'd be on the phone with Donald Trump right now. It seems to me that if Donald Trump, who likes to endorse candidates all over the country, if Donald Trump is going to endorse anyone, he's probably going to endorse Rick Becker. He may not endorse anybody. But if he does, that could be huge. But if you look at, let's just deal with the COVID issue and look at this state. North Dakota has been horrible when it comes to getting the vaccine, wearing masks. We're number one in the country for cases per capita. Rick Becker plays to that crowd with his misinformation and distortions about the effectiveness of the vaccine and encouraging people to take ivermectin. Those people will go for Rick Becker. Western North Dakota, I expect, will go for Rick Becker. And John Hoeven is going to kind of be caught because he needs to get the people who support Donald Trump. But just how far can he go with Rick Becker? He's going to have to break on issues such as COVID, and he's going to have to defend voting for the infrastructure, which should have been a no-brainer. Of course, it was necessary. But Donald Trump doesn't like anybody who voted for that first infrastructure bill, and that could hurt John Hoeven when it comes to the primary. So Rick Becker has his appeal, and John Hoeven has his vulnerabilities, in my opinion.
Tomorrow Rick Becker is going to join us, and he knows I'm going to ask him whether or not he's going to seek that endorsement from the president, if that means something to his campaign. The other thing that he knows I'm going to ask him is whether or not he's a hypocrite, that he believes in less government. Government shouldn't be making these payments. These programs shouldn't have went out there when, in fact, he applied for and received a PPP loan,
Right.
which in effect is a PPP grant. Nobody's paying these back. So
Right.
calling those loans is absolutely disingenuous to the public that's paying for them. And so do you believe that Rick Becker is a hypocrite by taking a PPP grant?
Yes. You can't have it both ways. Either you're against government for doing X, Y, and Z, or you're not. But you can't criticize them for doing one thing and then be on the receiving end of what you're criticizing them for. So, yes, he's a hypocrite.
So in that particular case, how much do you think that hurts him? Because if you're John Holt,
Very little. Very little.
The difference between these two candidates is one's got money and the other one doesn't. He doesn't have Rick Becker doesn't have a campaign fund that is, he doesn't have any campaign fund. Now, it doesn't take long to figure that out. You can find that out from the Secretary of State. John Hoeven has millions.
Correct.
How big of a factor is that?
It's a factor. It's not the factor. Your sister, Heidi Heitkamp, had way more money than Kevin Kramer, and she lost. Again, if Becker gets the endorsement of Trump, money's going to be flowing in. Now, he won't match Hoeven, but he'll have enough to make it competitive. And in North Dakota, because we're a small state and it doesn't cost a whole lot to advertising, you don't need a whole lot of money to get elected, just enough to be out there. And again, Rick Becker, he knows what he's doing. He's going to be aggressive. You're going to know he's running. He's going to get his message out there. And if I'm John Hoeven, this is again where it gets tricky. If I'm John Hoeven, I'm going to have to somehow try to appeal to Democrats to cross over in the primary and vote for him, kind of like what Doug Burgum did when he ran against Wayne Stencham.
Mm-hmm. There were many of us that supported that we wanted the better candidate, and actually I talked about it a lot on air. That being said, Doug Burgum proved to be one of the biggest Trumpers in the world. If Donald Trump said jump, he only asks how high.
Correct.
So it never worked out. It was a failed strategy on mine and other people's part. If you're John Hoeven now, and this race is as close as you think it might be, if you're John Hoeven, how do you run against Rick Becker? What do you say? What do you get out there? Because here's the truth about John Hoeven, Jim. He usually doesn't say anything. You can ask him whether the sky is blue, and he'll say tomorrow, well, yesterday it was cloudy, and today it might be hazy. And he never says, yes, the sky is blue. Why? He never puts his neck on the line. So if you're John Hoeven and you are potentially in a close race, what changes? Do you have to finally say it? Answer the question.
If I'm John Hoeven, I'm going to have to tell people the truth about COVID and how Rick Becker, as a physician, is giving bogus information that's dangerous. And I'm the one telling you to get vaccinated. I'm the one telling you to wear a mask. I'm the one telling you not to take unproven drugs. In eastern North Dakota, Hoeven's got a very good issue. Becker was against funding the FM diversion. And if you live in the Fargo metro area, everybody supported that plan. Everybody knows it was vital. I know you had your issues with it, but it was a very popular plan. And Hoeven, one of the things he did do was he got funding for the diversion. So I would wear that on my shoulder. So here, John Hoeven delivers for people. That will resonate in the East, because I think this will really kind of become an East-West battle, where Hoeven's strength will be in eastern North Dakota and Becker's strength will be in western North Dakota.
And I want to be clear, you're spot on right. I put challenges out on the diversion because the upstream people, in my opinion, weren't being treated fairly. And in the end, they got a lot of money out of it. And so if I stop at the Knicker, I usually don't have to buy a drink.
Well, you know what they say, money talks and you know what walks.
That's right.
So
but going back to laying claim to what you voted for, what you didn't vote for, you still have to articulate that. You have to, if you're John Hoeven, do you acknowledge that Rick Becker is a viable candidate against you, or do you just run on your record, be John Hoeven, don't say anything again, look at poll numbers and just assume you're going to win?
I've been around long enough, and I've seen that strategy fail. and I'm talking about 1986, when Mark Andrews ran against Kent Conrad, and Mark Andrews was way ahead. And Mark Andrews' strategy was to ignore Kent Conrad, to not basically even acknowledge he had an opponent, just to praise himself, not to bait him, not go negative. And Conrad hammered Andrews and hammered Andrews. Andrews was an incumbent senator in a Republican state, and when he started the race, Andrews was up by 30 points, and Conrad beat him. John Hoeven, if he's smart, you do not ignore Rick Becker. You take him seriously, and you give people reasons to question that whether Rick Becker is qualified to be a U.S. Senator, and you tout your own record on very safe issues.